Let's play some 10-minute chess. And this time we're playing white. I'm going to try playing d4 with the Jobava London. And we get typical Jobava London setup. Bishop f4, knight f6. And here I'm going to show you this idea with f3, g4, and h4. So e6 developing the other bishop. And then h4 going directly to try to trap this bishop. Now, that's a decent move, giving the bishop an escape square. Now we need to think about what to do. One move is e3, intending bishop to d3, trying to trade off the bishop now. Another move here is a3, stopping the bishop from going to b4. Let's try e3 in this game. And after the game, we'll analyze to see if there's better move than bishop d3. Now here, black is just castled, which I think is a mistake because of the move bishop takes g6, followed by the move queen to d3, attacking this pawn. This pawn is very hard to defend, but you can go queen e8. That would be the way to defend it. The knight c3 was played. And I'm very tempted to just take this. If I don't take it, then queen e8 is going to happen, which defends the pawn. So I just go ahead and take the pawn. I don't really mind bishop takes e3, b takes e3, because that gives me the bishop pair. Knight e7 is a move aiming to repel my queen from g6. And there's really only one move here, bring it back. Otherwise, I was threatening bishop takes g6 if the queen was still on g6, taking advantage of that pinned pawn. Now c5 was played. And because this pawn duo is very strong, and because the bishop is here, I'm considering d takes c5. Because if I go knight f to e2, the move c4 would be played, could be played, and then I might need to go queen d2, which puts my queen and my king in the pin with the bishop. So therefore I'm thinking that taking here is probably the best. And after bishop takes c5, I can finally castle, or I can bring my knight to e2. Or I can consider moves like g5, h5. Out of all these moves, I believe that knight ge2 is a very good move. Castling is also a very good move. So I don't have a particular preference. I'm going to go castling. Maybe this was slightly more accurate, I'm not sure. But in any case, I believe both have to be played for me to conduct an attack. Now that we're castled opposite sides, this next phase of the game is likely going to be an attacking game, where both sides try to attack each other. In particular, this h6 pawn is a hook that I can use to go g5 and rip open the king side. So knight c6 happened, and now the opponent is trying to go with e5. e5 attacks my bishop, and that's quite a good move. So I think g5 is a move that quickly counters the idea. g5, knight h5 could be played, and then g takes h6, knight takes f4. Seems like it leads to a decent position. So I'll go ahead and play g5 here. Very dangerous for black, because if black takes with that h-pawn, then I get h takes, and then queen g6 is dangerous, queen h7 is dangerous, and e takes f6 is dangerous. Now I'll move knight b4, which seems a little bit dubious to me. Could be the start of something very dangerous for black, because my queen can enter g6. But then queen e8 is a good move, because if I take, the knight can take and also save itself. So I need to think about this one. I also have a nice move, queen to b5, because it attacks bishop, and with the bishop and the knight hanging could be good, but then I realized queen b5, knight d7 saves both of them. Let me just think about it for a second. Queen g6, queen e8. Queen e2, knight h5. We'll try this queen b5 idea then. After knight d7, I can finally take that. Keeping the option for my queen to duck back anywhere. But notice if I go knight e2, then the queen can't go back on this diagonal anymore, unless I kick out the knight, and then I can go queen e3. Seems like my opponent ditched the game. Fortunate, I wanted to see how it would play out. And I expected here, knight d7. I was planning to just take, opening up the kingside to have a dangerous attack. And perhaps I was expecting something like g6. And at this point, I think maybe retreating my queen and going for this, and pushing h5 would be the way to continue the attack. So I was thinking queen e2, queen g2, h5, maybe king here. Then I get the knight here, and it's very dangerous. And that was what I was thinking. And I think this would be a win for white. White is completely winning here. Always knight g5, e6, also forking the queen and the rook. Very dangerous position, very typical Jobava London style. So let me check the final position with engine. And yes, indeed, knight d7, g takes. I thought g6 would be reasonable here. And going here is a good idea. Also knight h3, as I said before. Knight g5, also a good idea. That's good. Let's talk about this Jobava London opening. After d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4, my opponent went for this line with bishop f5. Now here we go f3, and the point of f3 is to go g4, h4, gaining a lot of space and potentially trapping the bishop. So bishop f5 was played because black wants to go e6 and wants to develop the bishop, but if they go e6 here, it blocks in this bishop. So they go bishop f5, f3, e6, we both carry out our plans, g4, bishop g6, and h4, immediately threatening h5, which traps the bishop. So h6 was played, which is fine. Another move here is h5, and h5 is also a good move because it also creates escape squares, but also creates tension between g4 and h5 pawns. And if h5, the game would proceed g5, knight f d7, and here there's e3 or e4. e3 appears to be what's played the most in Masters games. And also e4 is playable, creating tension between the center, and this is my preferred approach. This leads to a very tactical and wild game, so I play this e4 move myself. But if h6, here I go e3. I mentioned in the game, though, that often bishop e4 is somewhat irritating, and there could be a case for a3 in a lot of these positions. In this case, it doesn't work because c5 is strong. But in other similar positions, a3 is definitely worth considering. So here, I go e3, and my opponent goes bishop b4. Here I go bishop d3. Also worth noting is the fact that I could throw in h5 just to gain some space before going something like bishop d3. And this is interesting because h5 is always a possibility, and it's kind of up to you whether you want to play it now or later. But if you don't play it now, what you get is later, say if black castles, you can go g5, and if they take with the h-pawn, then you can recapture. potentially with the h-pawn. So just say, for example, play a random move, and then castles g5. Now I can take with the h-pawn, which is kind of the threat that was outlined in this game. In the final position, I went g5, and taking like this is essentially unthinkable for black, because taking with the h-pawn opens up our h-rook for the attack. So this is an additional option you get if you don't push the pawn to h5. Just interesting notes, but I've tried both of these moves, both with and without h5 in my blitz games. I find that h5 is great for blitz because you can always push g5 and then just take with the bishop, and that works good too when you're attacking. Anyways, in this game I chose not to do that, and I just went bishop d3. So after castles, this is a serious inaccuracy because white can take, which shatters black's pawns, and then go queen d3, immediately targeting this pawn. And this is a huge deal, because normally in the Jobava, you really want to trade off this bishop for black before thinking about castling or anything like that. Because if you let this pawn structure happen, this g-pawn becomes a huge target because it's not able to be supported by other pawns anymore. That's one of the disadvantages of doubled pawns, is that these pawns are not able to be supported, that is, by other pawns easily. Now it's hard to defend that pawn, and with my space advantage and my aggressive position on the king side, it's already very dangerous. See, everything's pointed this way, and my rook is here, leading to a huge attack, so that's exactly what happens. Knight c6, and then I take that pawn. If I castle or do anything else, the move queen to e8, save the pawn, and white is still better, but I saw no reason why I shouldn't take the pawn. So queen takes g6, knight e7, queen back to d3. Knight e7 is a good move, because if black does nothing, I have at least bishop takes h6, taking advantage of the pinned g7 pawn. So knight e7, kicking my queen back, and c5. And here, I took, it's apparently a big mistake. And actually, knight ge2 is correct. And what I was afraid of is that after c4 queen d2, my pieces are stepping on a pin, and say b5 g5 happens, knight h5. I was afraid that my pieces here are just kind of paralyzed. But I can castle and actually bring my bring my rook over to g1. After queen a5, I at least have the move rook d to g1, which I missed. Didn't really see this idea, and I thought it might be dangerous that black could take, and if I go knight takes, go b4, and suddenly I lose my pawn, or c3, all kinds of attacking moves for black. After c3, black can take this. And the point is, you can't take here because you get checkmated. But after the move bishop takes c3, I can take with the queen and give my king an escape square. So after queen takes a2, I can just take this, and this attack with the rook and the pawn is also dangerous. So it's a highly sharp position, leading to some crazy tactics like this. And queen a3 can trade queens, and white is better in this resulting position, being up 2 pawns. But it's highly complicated, so I just want d takes c5. Here, I guess I should have thought more about knight e2. And what I personally need to work on is not being scared of a move like this, and just going for g5 and g takes h6. So this would have been good for me. Should have played that. Instead, I took the pawn, and after knight d7, black is very much in the game, because black is getting the knight out of the way of g5, so it's not going to be attacked anymore. And also rounding up his pawn with rook c8, knight c5 ideas. So after a3, knight c5, queen d2, black has to take, because if they don't take, they get forked. This. So they take, and go rook c8, and that rook is opposing my queen. I have to go either retreat it, or if I castle, then black gets a huge attack, and this is very dangerous for white. Of course, white also has a decent attack. Knight e2, a5. King b1, getting the king out of this dangerous c-file. Queen b6 with some b4 going on. It's really white who needs to be careful in this position. But my opponent missed that, and they went bishop takes c5 instead. After castles, it's very easy to play for white, because you have a simple plan of going g5 or h5, maybe knight h3 or knight e2, and then attacking, maybe bringing the rook on d1 to g1. With these two rooks and the queen and the bishop, very clear what white's plan is. Knight c6, I go g5. Now knight b4, a serious mistake, because already black's piece was hit, so making another threat with this knight b4 is just a one move attack. That allows me to make yet another threat. Two pieces are hanging, and this entire position is very loose for black, because already the pawn on g5 is making contact with both the knight on f6 and the pawn on h6. And here my opponent ditched the game because it's hard to play. But even after knight d7, saving that attacked knight and defending the attacked bishop, then I can just start attacking. And for example, go knight h3, the idea might be rook g1 and queen e2, queen g2. So just as an example, if you do nothing, I already have bishop takes h6, another threat. So you might think, okay, what about king h7? It's similarly still very hard to play. Very hard to play. Even a move that's not the best, like queen e2, is decent, because you can maybe swing the queen over g2. I'm not saying this is the best move, but if white has a lot of good moves, then that indicates the position is easy to play for white. And this is just completely losing for black. Black's pieces are all scattered, black's king has no cover, and this is resignable. But white can start with moves like a3, and after this, even just a safe move like tucking the king away, and if a6, retreating the queen, and even just taking the pawn. These are all easy moves to play, and white can get that g5 square for the pieces, and or bring the rook in. And there's even a sacrifice, knight takes d5, with the idea of attacking this pinned knight, which is defending this bishop. And if you move the knight, you lose the bishop. And you still have the idea of bishop takes h6, and or rook g1 to attack. And this is just a disaster for black. So this entire idea of g5 is a very typical Jobava London attacking idea. Because in the Jobava London, you always play h4 and g4 if given the chance. And this is the natural extension of that. So I hope you enjoy this game. This is a fun little one, illustrating just how poisonous the Jobava London is, even in a 10-minute game. Thanks for watching. See you next time.